All right, everyone. We are back. Anyone starting to appreciate just truly how great this is and that there's so much we do not know, that it's way beyond what we've been told? Oh boy. This is it's very humbling to even speak on these things because I didn't figure it out. Like, we're not worthy. I didn't figure this out. It was freely given. You know, freely I give unto you as freely you've been given. But, oh, man.
None of us are worthy of this discussion. And yet, we have a king that wants us to have it.
Mm-hmm.
This code's going to be very interesting this year. So, yeah.
Indeed it will.
Yeah. Just so people know, we're going to be doing a series called Hold the Line. We're going to raise in that a number of things for us all to chew on. And we will chew on the message that Sukkot are the remainder of our time and the time to me. And we believe there's a Messiah that wants us to. There's a reason. There's a reason for it. Special time we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. Special indeed. Well, let's, we won't yabber too much. Let's just jump in. I've got 3 hands up here, so that will be our 3 hands. I'll go in order. They're on my screen, which means that Trisha, you will be first. And Zoom has changed everything again.
What?
Hang on. All right, let's do it this way. Ask to unmute. There you go. You should be able to unmute.
Shabbat shalom. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
We can.
Perfect. All right. My question pertains to something you said at the beginning of the teaching, Michael. And if I understood correctly, you said we are to have the faith of Abraham, which automatically made me think of the scripture. I had to look it up. It's Romans 12:3, where it says that Yah has given each of us a measure of faith. And what I understood is that, and I could be wrong, that like some people have more faith, some people have less faith. But then I also started thinking that in Acts, you guys have said that like Yah is not a respecter of persons. So I'm like, I don't feel like that thought process really jives then. So how does that pertain to what you said of we are to have the faith that Abraham has, with this idea, like I said, of Romans 3 saying, Yah has given each of us a measure of faith. So I don't know. That's my question.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Since you've come and jumped in the river, so to speak, the river of life, has your faith grown or has it stood still?
Yes, definitely grown. It's definitely changed.
Exactly. You know, we were all given a measure. That doesn't mean the measure remains the same. You know, think of the parable of the talents. He gave one talent, 2 talents. What did they remain like that? No, they multiplied them. Woe unto the one that didn't, right? He experienced losses because you can make the point he didn't grow his measure of faith. You know, that's one aspect of it. I believe the talents are ultimately pointing to the harvest in people, but you know, I found that the more I serve others, the more my faith grows. Actually, it's like if you serve unto others, you will reap what you sow, you know, and you will reap the fruit thereof. And so, in its simplicity, yes, Yah's given us all a measure of faith. He's given us a deposit, a down payment of the Ruach, which is a deposit of the things to come. right now we see in a glass dimly, then we shall see clearly. You know, you see the whole time, like Yah gives you something and he's saying, what are you going to do with it? And so I don't believe it goes against the fact that Yah is not a respecter of people, because he's given everybody a measure and he's given everybody the ability to grow that measure. And this is where the sovereignty of Yah and the sovereignty of man comes in. You know, this is our part to play now in this test. What will we do with the measure that has been given unto us? Are we going to use it for self-gain, or are we going to use it to serve his body? And thus we grow. You know, Abraham, one of the things that Abraham is known for, and Judah picks up on this quite correctly, actually, Abraham was known for his hospitality, his willingness to serve. And they look to Abraham when he entertains Elohim and the two men, and how he's just go, 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 go. And his bride helps him in serving food on the table, right? Think of the shadow picture being given there. Ultimately, the bride of Messiah, right? Helping to feed the eternal family, these living waters, this bread of life. And so Abraham is known for being a servant. And Judah does pick up on this correctly. And so I believe it's through serving that our measure of faith grows. And this then brings in the parable of the talents. That's what I have to say on that.
So that would mean like even Abraham's faith had to grow too. It wasn't just like, boom, he got all this faith and we got to figure it out.
Well, you see his growth. Like, in fact, you know, when we get to Jacob, Israel, and Joseph brings Jacob before Pharaoh, right? And what does Jacob say? He says, oh, I've experienced many woes and many trials, yet here I am. Yeah. You know, we see the growth of Abraham, hence the name change. We see the growth of Sarah, hence the name change. We see the growth of Isaac, because Isaac committed the same thing that Abraham did, you know, lying about his wife. Like, when Yah said, walk before me and be perfect, Abram had to learn what it meant to walk before him with integrity, with fullness of faith. So, and this is why I love Paul's verbiage that we're to have the faith of Abraham, because, you know, Paul says that Abraham received the covenant in physical uncircumcision, and that circumcision became a symbol of the greater circumcision that would occur through faith in Messiah. And we're all being given an opportunity to walk in the footsteps of Abraham, to grow in our faith, to learn what it means to walk before Elohim with integrity of heart. You know, Abraham grew, Isaac grew, Jacob grew, Moshe grew, the disciples grew. We grow.
I think
that makes sense.
I think Paul was alluding to this with growing to the fullness of Messiah, Trisha, and with growing to the fullness of Messiah, it's impossible that your faith couldn't mature. And so the measure that we're given in our journey and at points in our journey, if we can grow it from there, that's the point, not, you know, the amount of the measure itself, because Elohim knows what we need, what we can handle, what we can start off with, you know, all that kind of thing. And one of the statements, and you'll find this, Messiah is actually alluding to this in a very interesting way, as recorded in the Brit. And he says, greater are those who have not seen and yet have believed. You see, he's actually pointing to a measure that takes a greater requirement. You remember a lot, the disciples that were part of the early Kahal that would go on to change the course of human history, they were given a real boost start. They did experience the upper room. They did see Messiah glorified and the elders with him. They experienced and saw something. In fact, they allude to it themselves without a reservation. They actually say, I was there. I heard the voice. I saw, you know, they're making the point. And so, but yet Messiah makes the point, greater are those who have not seen and have yet believed. Not the Thomas that had to put his finger through, the glorified remnant of the wounds that he received. Not seeing the resurrected saints, not seeing, we are the ones that have, in fact, coming to the end of the age, we've really had the deck stacked against us. We've got all the lies that have come before us to this point, inherited by our fathers. We have a modern world that is coming to the end of its age, and all the deception, the most deceptive times in all of human history, arguably since the flood. But even the flood, I don't think would qualify, because there wouldn't have been an atheist before the flood. And so we've experienced atheism. We've experienced every form of government and societal and religious controls upon us for which these lies to be inherited. And so, when we really view this in the context of your question, we have to get back to Messiah's words, and I look at, those chosen to be here at the end of the age, and I think, my goodness, this screen right now, this Q&A, these teachings should be impossible if not for the Ruach and his truth. It should be. And so the messengers, I think are, they're learning. The whole cosmos is learning. And so we, the greatness of what this is, and again, we'll go more into it in Sukkot, but yeah, it's Messiah himself made the statement. And, we are the ones that did not get a chance to be there and to see it and to witness it. Yet we're all here on this screen right now. If that's not worthy of praise to the King, because we didn't do it, did we, Trisha?
Not at all.
Right? Like, we just got to be honest with ourselves, look in the mirror long enough and go, I'm not here because of me and how wonderful I am and what I know or think I know, and neither is anybody else. So, maybe that should equate to some praise to the King. It's exciting, isn't it?
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much, brothers. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of you guys' Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
The Urgles. This is the band. Adrian and the Urgles. Are we going to get to see this live at Sukkot? Adrian and the Urgles?
Yeah, that might be in the works. We might be jamming on some stuff over here sometimes. Shabbat Shalom, brothers. How y'all doing?
Good. Shabbat Shalom.
We're good. Thank you.
Well, I had a couple of thoughts while you were teaching, and let me know if I'm jumping ahead into like future teachings or whatnot. But my mind went to John 3. A lot of what you were teaching today made me think of his conversation with Nicodemus about the wind, where it blows. And Yeshua's statement, I know where I came from and I know where I'm going. And his statement to his disciples, you know where I'm going. And I thought also about the flaming sword at the entrance to the garden, right, in the book of Genesis. And I thought my mind went to Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4, when Ezekiel had that vision and he saw the flashes of fire and something like gleaming metal within it. And then there were the 4 seraphim or cherubim, whatever he saw. And I had this thought, of is the garden, and is there a connection in between the garden and New Jerusalem?
Well, Revelation clearly equates the lamb to the tree of life. When you follow Ezekiel's vision, Isaiah's vision, the cherubim, because it says he placed cherubim. Where are the cherubim? We have so many visions telling us the cherubim are around the throne. You know, Yeshua is saying he is the vine, he's the bread of life, you know, and so you don't even have to make an educated guess that what and who the tree of life is, you know. So I think, you know, you're right on the button there. But you mentioned the conversation with Nicodemus, right? There's a whole journey there of I know where I'm going, I know where I come from and where I'm going. The question is, do you, right? Because Yeshua says those born of water and spirit know where they come from and where they're going. You know, and I believe this ultimately ties in with Yeshua's prayer in John 17. I know whom I've chosen. I chose you from before time. And, you know, but everyone likes to pick on Nicodemus. Everyone loves to pick on him. Oh, silly Nicodemus. Nicodemus was not stupid. You know, how can I leave my mother's womb and re-enter? You do realize there's a biblical verse that supports that thinking. And it's Job. Naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I shall return. And even you look at the Hebrew, naked I will return there. The there is actually there in the Hebrew. What is that pointing to? I'll put that as a breadcrumb out there because it ties into what was covered today in Psalm 139. Yeah. You know, but Nicodemus was not being dumb. He just lacked understanding on this greater depths of this plan of redemption from the eternal place. He was confusing the womb of the mother with what that points to. And you follow that track, oh boy, your knees will jerk and kick the table. I know that because I went there. And I was like, that... Psalm 139, you knitted me together in the depths of the earth. There you go. I'll leave that there.
Yeah, that made me, that right there really made me think about the Garden of Eden, which the word, you know, garden is really gone, which is for an enclosure, right? So that's what
study out the depths of the earth. Just study that out. It will lead you to a very interesting place, shall we say? Where does your soul go?
Where did it come from?
There's many things that religion, I don't mean this to be, it's bastardized, the scriptural understanding. That's the nicest way I can put it. It's really corrupted the understanding. And when we just allow the word to says what it says and we go, okay, the word's not wrong. It's the noise in my head that's preventing me from accepting what's plainly written. You know, it's plainly written. And if you're having a knee-jerk reaction, that's the leaven we've all inherited, the lies of our forefathers. And that doesn't mean you're going to figure stuff out instantly. It's a journey. Like I've still got things on my proverbial shelf that I'm still longing to look into. And that's part of the journey.
Good deal. Well, that answers my question. I was just curious, man. And you're not the only one that's geeking out on these teachings here lately. So, and I really appreciate, you know, your heart and Curtis's heart to share your understanding with the rest of the community here. It's really awesome to see, man.
We appreciate that, brother. We may have lost our memory from outside the time domain, but we worship an Elohim of restoration. And even though things may not have been perfected in the garden, perfection will come with full restoration. Mm. And that full perfection may require of us to understand the knowledge of good and evil in order to be perfected and to perfect love. And these are things we just cannot comprehend. that, this is, how do you perfect Adam and Eve? And, we're experiencing this, and all who have entered the time domain and have gone through the human experience and the test. And so, he's reminding us with aspects in the Word, and alluding to and pointing to the Torah, the prophets, the creation, in very different ways, so that we can, even though we have spiritual amnesia, I'm going to remind you, I'm going to point you here. And I think one of the reasons why he does that is so that the test remains real. So that we actually have to journey this out in order to even possibly even have a conversation which would ask questions. But what Mystery Babylon, what religion has sought to do, it's obvious with Rome, but that's easy. But what Mystery Babylon has done, religion and her seduction, has shut down all of this. And Messiah hated it. He, as Michael points out, Nicodemus wasn't stupid. Yet, I think Gene pointed out in the question, yet he rebuked Nicodemus. He's not rebuking for the sake of rebuking. He's literally going, hey, not far enough. Don't stop here in religion. And these are the things where, you get to a point where you'll start to ask questions, not from a position of, I want knowledge and revelation and look how smart I am and blah, blah, blah. You'll actually start seeking these matters because there's something drawing us closer to the source of life, to the source of creation, to the source of this great plan of redemption. Our motivation will actually begin to change. And, we see so much in the religious world. It's all about knowledge. What's the Greek say? What's the Hebrew say? What's the knowledge? What's the latest revelation? And all this kind of stuff. And if it's not with the right motivation, we are easily inherent lies are turned, in all sorts of places. But once that motivation starts to develop maturity and integrity and everything else, it's a much different place. And Mystery Babylon has sought to shut this down at all costs. Shut it down. Do not remember who you are. Do not even ask that question. Do not even go there. Do not even think about these matters, and then sought to control that whole process. I'll talk about that more in the Character Messiah series, but, it's one of these things where, we're allowing this chance as the remnant coming to the end of the age. But Michael and I don't believe that didn't occur right through the time domain. There's always been a remnant that has made it to this place, of asking and seeking and whatnot. But the maturity really does change the motivation, because it's no longer based on pride. It's no longer based in that space. And so we're actually able to learn. We're actually able to see and hear more, because the pride, the leaven, is being removed. And it counteracts our fallen state.
Yep. It's almost like you're saying that it's not about us, but it's about him, right?
But it's a nice statement until it actually happens.
Yeah.
My experience is it's taken the whole time domain to work on that, right? But I know my knowledge in and of itself never spared my folly. It actually takes this process and to change in us, and that's why I say the heart circumcision will ultimately change our motivation, and our motivation will lead to greater understanding. But this time, hopefully, more humbly, without pride, without all this stuff that has just misrepresented our Elohim.
Yep. Got to keep our hands to the plow, right?
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Well, I appreciate it, brothers. And you guys have a blessed Shabbat, and I really appreciate you guys.
You guys too. And we're looking forward to Adrian and the Urgles live. There's nothing like it.
We have a
It
lot
is
of fun
the
up here.
only one in all the time domain. There's only one, Adrian and the Urgles.
Yeah. It's been a huge blessing, to have this man in our life. It's really been great.
He is kind of a blessing, isn't he?
Yeah, a little bit.
We agree. Until he starts cracking the whip, though, with the ministering to the king team when we're all trying to sort things out.
Hey, I understand why he cracks the whip on the musicians. That's the producer's mindset, and Yard's created all kinds of vessels, right? And
That's right.
we need that line of sight sometimes.
Very much so, especially this guy.
It's nice to see you both together on Shabbat.
Yeah.
By the way,
you guys enjoy your Shabbat.
Oh, we will. We'll be here till well after dark, I'm sure.
Nice.
All right. Shalom, brothers.
Shalom. Right. All right.
Mark. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, brothers.
Hey.
Oh. Hey, how are y'all doing?
Good, sir.
Oh, enjoy the teaching. This made me think of, the heavenly census. Curtis, you might get this. In the Baptist church that I used to be in, a big song was, "When the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there." Heavenly census. Do you remember that one song? No? Okay.
I in all honesty, I was so busy waiting for it to end as a 10-year-old because it was so boring. I just wanted it to finish so that I could go eat lunch. If I'm to be honest, I'd just be like, oh no, not another one, not another hymn. In fact, I would just say, I'm thankful for a lot of it now in some ways, and just doing it all. But when I I'll tell you a little story. When I was old enough to be in the service during, the monthly, partaking of the wine and the bread, and in the Baptist church that I was in, every month you would, partake of communion. And so when I was finally old enough to be able to be present during that, and I'd come of age, which I think was 8 years old, I didn't know what the protocols were, and I didn't even know that this was going to happen. And I remember when the bread came by, the bowl of bread, I just thought it was grab a handful. So I grabbed a whole handful, and my mom's like, "Curtis, what are you doing?" Give me that bread. So anyway, I don't know what kind of a child saddle picture that is, but I tried to grab as much as I could. Anyway, I was explained later that wasn't the procedure, but yeah, I remember how much trouble I got in. It was, like, I stuck my whole hand in there and grabbed the whole lot, like a bowl of popcorn. Anyway, so there you go. That's how much I. Yeah, I don't know. Father's been working on me ever since.
I've got a couple of thoughts and then a question, which leads to a question. So, when you were talking in Psalms chapter 87 about this and that one was born there, and each one was born in her, and that being those that go through his wrath into the millennial kingdom, and then they're mortals actually, right, having babies and giving and in marriage, populating the earth while we're reigning. Is that online with what you were saying there?
What I believe the psalm is kind of pointing to, I believe that when it says, those that are born in Zion, I actually believe that's a bridal statement. And so, because we know that in the New Jerusalem, it's a statement of intimacy. Only like it's the overcomers that are given the ability to enter in through the gates of unfortunately, what Christianity has done it's a broad brushstroke here, but what they're, if you're not in the New Jerusalem, you're in the lake of fire. That's not what it says. It just says that you're not afforded a certain luxury of intimacy. This is why we say those that are of the ruling governance, the bride of Messiah, and those that are not. There will be those in the wedding feast and those outside the wedding feast. And so I believe those born in her, born in Zion, are the overcomers. I believe that's where the statement of being written, your names are written in the stars, because the context of Yeshua saying that is to 72. We know only, technically 12 of those made it, because even though Judas did what he did, another one replaced him, which means that do you know what I mean? So he was in that position. And so, yes, there was a certain authority, but it's almost like Yeshua is saying, he's pointing, are you my bride, essentially is what he's saying. And so I believe that's what being born in her is. This is why Paul would say, in the passage we read, there are those right now that, though they do not know it, they walk as enemies against the resurrection of Messiah. And that's within a body context. And the contrast of that is, but our citizenship is in heaven. We don't mind that which is earthly. We mind that which is heavenly. Like, where is our focus? And then Abraham, right? His focus was on that which was yet to come. And so I think this is what you're seeing with those being born in her. It's the overcomer. And the overcomer seems to be the one that will help to serve in the millennial reign as part of that bridal governance.
That led me to think of another thought. So going into millennial reign, we're in the New Testament. One was asking the Messiah, this woman was married to this man, he died, and she got married again. She had this man, and he died, and and she got married again. In the reign, they were saying, now whose husband will she be? Or whose wife will she be? And we go, and he says, we're not given in marriage at all in this millennial kingdom. So we go into the kingdom as the bride.
Well, he says something very specific. The sons of this age will not be given in marriage. If you're part of the resurrection, i.e. the sons of this age, and you're resurrected, that statement is true. Right?
Yeah,
what about those that do make it, the mortal seed, Paul? Well, that's a different story. It's like, again, we've got to be careful to not miss out some crucial bits. Yeshua says it will be the sons of this age. He doesn't say the sons of the next age.
Yes, that's what I'm not phrasing it right, but that's what I'm thinking, exactly what you said. So when we go into the millennial kingdom as his bride,
marriage is a shadow picture. Remember that right now, marriage, husband, wife, is a shadow picture pointing to something greater. And again, this is why I say, like, these analogies that we've been given, marriage, parenthood, sons, daughters, they're there to teach us principles, not to give us like exact blueprint schematic diagrams of the order of the cosmos. We know these things are a shadow picture, you know, and so what are they pointing to? Growth, maturity, growing, intimacy. You know, how can you be a son of Elohim and the bride of Messiah, right? It's right in that statement. It's telling you these things are shadow pictures. And so, yes, there will be a bride of Messiah, but that's the weightier matter. Don't, you know, what Yeshua is saying is if you're resurrected, you won't need the shadow picture anymore. You won't need it. Those that are still mortal, they're going to need a shadow picture. In fact, he's bringing back a sacrificial system as a shadow picture because they need to hear some things. But he's saying those of this age, not that age, this age, you won't need the shadow picture anymore because you'll have the weightier matter.
So that's what I was getting to as a question. The sacrificial system shown in Ezekiel in the millennial kingdom, when all nations are called, you know, to worship. And will that be kind of like a giant Sukkot for us coming back to the Father, and like a family reunion like we have at Sukkot coming up, and each Sukkot has been better and better and better and just more beautiful? I'm just wondering, would that be kind of like a family reunion of all those who serve Yeshua wherever he calls us out to, if we're found worthy to be his bride? Would that be kind of like a big family reunion? I mean, that was my question coming to.
Well, it's at such a level, Mark, that it's actually Sukkot. Out of all the Moedim, all the cake ingredients are now there. So we've actually had the fulfillment of the fall appointed time. So all the cake ingredients are there for the final age. The whole recipe is present. And he's going to ice the cake, if you will, in the final age. And one of the things is what that teaches us, and even why, you know, the sacrifices are present, is it's not the animal sacrifice has never in and of itself been the remission of sin. The word is clear on that. It's always been a shadow picture, whether you're before Messiah or whether you're after Messiah. Why bring it back? And so it's for the purpose that we would know the Lamb. Now, there's something they will get in the final age, which is incredible, which we never got. Again, greater are those who have not seen. We couldn't imagine how powerful it would be to be actually once again experience and seeing a Pesach lamb slaughtered in the shadow picture, in the Tudor picture, and then go to visit the king in person and actually gaze upon the Lamb. We don't understand the power of that and what's going to be required for the final age. What we do know is that those who do not honor Sukkot particularly seems to come with a penalty that is highlighted in Scripture. And so there's reasons for this as to what we're actually seeing, how powerful this really is. We can't even comprehend what it would be like to go through the ancient practices involving a Pesach lamb, and then within that same year, you're marched in front of the Lamb. That lesson is beyond comprehension for us in this age. Yet they're going to experience this. It's staggering in its implications. And so people get confused, well, why do we need to slaughter? We don't need to slaughter lambs in the final age. So then why is he doing it? See, we don't ask the question. Is there a real reason? And this, there isn't. He's doing everything he can to bring them to the point of, the sovereign choices and things like that. But what we do with our leaven is we go, no, there's no animal sacrifice, nor Scripture. Well, there is, and that's why, we don't need this and that. Oh, it's all allegory. And it's like, just hear from the Ruach, read it all, connect all the dots, and then eventually you start asking the question, well, if that be true, what it's saying, then why? We often in our religious leaven are never led to the why. This is what Mystery Babylon is shutting down. And then we have all sorts of arguments and divisions. Some take it literally, some are taking it allegorically, all this kind of stuff. And the why is being missed on both sides, you know? And so you're asking those questions not from that position. You know, Paula made quite an interesting statement on here, and she may have raised her hand as a result, but she was looking into Psalm 139:15. And this whole being born of water, you know, and she's relating it back to Sheol and the deep oceans and the water. And it's quite interesting where she's gone in this. If you'll find that interesting, Michael, too, where you see where Paula's thoughts went. It's a very powerful thing for us to understand that everything in the time domain is teaching us something great. And so, you know, we need to, when we reduce born again to some magical poof moment and suddenly you're all so wonderful. Well, I'm sorry, if your lifetime hasn't shown you that in your own life or in all the people around you, you're either deluded or you're just a liar. You know, if being born again was some magical moment where you became wonderful, Mark, then Scripture's lying or we don't understand it. You see, and I'm going to go with the word's not lying. I'm going to go with all of us need to understand it. I'm not going to put his word on the stand, right? And so when I look at people, and this is what Mystery Babylon's done, and in this whole deception of what born again is supposed to be in the Christian message and whatnot, and it's like, wow, you know. And so what it does is the way it's even taught forces them to become whitewashed tombs. And to play this game, and it ultimately becomes hypocrisy and a horrible witness, because we're not really understanding what these things, what these shadow pictures are truly pointing to, and the why of it. You know, what does this really mean, being born of the Spirit and water? What did born again mean to the ancients, not to modern denominational, whitewashed religious environments? We have to get beyond this and to actually understand, because if I'm to take what I'm seeing in a modern religious whitewashed environment and put the word to the test and not them, we're in a fool's game. I am not going to put the word on the stand. I'm going to look at the witness and go, there's a problem with the witness. Maybe it's because we don't understand. We have to look at ourselves first, you know, before we look at everyone else. And that takes a process of breaking us down, you know. We've been chosen to come into the time domain for the end of the age. Very difficult time, very deceived time. Possibly we may experience ourselves the Great Tribulation if he deems us to remain here to the end of the age. It's a fascinating question to ask yourself. Is it because you were all so good to be chosen for this time, or is it was because we all required because of how bad we were? You see, we can sit there and go, oh, I'm chosen for this day and age because of how wonderful I am, and not even consider, have I been chosen for this day and age because it was required as a part of my measure? You see, this can go either way. Our pride will go, well, look how special I am. Our humility might go, gee, maybe I needed this. You see, we are putting this in context of our religious modern environments, and then trying to then through that lens, as Michael was saying, we see partly and make these interpretations. But if we can get in the river of life, suddenly it's going to lead us to going, wait a minute, you know, this is far beyond our, you know, what we've inherited through our various religious environments. And so we ponder these things now at a deeper level. By the way, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know, Mark, whether you needed this day and age or whether you're so wonderful you were chosen for it. I'm not saying I got the answer to that as it relates to you. What I do know is that we need the test in its measure all throughout the ages and all that have come before us. Do you see what I mean? And this is what Michael is pointing to as we come to the conclusion of this series and these sorts of things. And we will bring some things to further question, at the very least, some of the whys of all this in relationship to, why would he not allow us to have total amnesia? Why reveal any of this? And so is it possible to understand this inside the test? And can you do it without hungering and thirsting? Can you do it without repentance? Can you do it without, do you see what's going on? Is it possible to overcome this great test and to understand these matters and therefore grow to the fullness of Messiah, grow to the measure, mature in the measure that he's giving us, all these sorts of things? Or do we just accept our little religious control package that's been sold us? It doesn't matter which side of the river it is. And so this is what we're all facing now. Why have all these other things in the word? Why reveal, give us revelation of what you have said, not what we invent? Why do this at all? What's this test really about? And what's it really doing for us? And so we have the faith, not a faith. It's incredible if we'll go there. If not, we'll settle with a faith and then just argue with everyone until our time in the time domain's done. So we're choosing to go, well, I don't know. I don't want to spend the rest of my time here in the time domain in some arguments and divisions and debates and, trying to prove everyone wrong. And if you can pin them down eschatologically or theologically to the mat, yay, look at me, I'm so wonderful. It's like, we've got a short moment in the time domain. Let's not waste it. Let's not invent it, and let's not change and make him up in our own image and throw away the foundation of our face or the blood that bought us and all this sorts of things, because this is all what religion is doing. And then it points the finger because you haven't bought into their box. You're an error, Mark, because you haven't agreed to the little religious control box I have learned. And this is going on everywhere. It's staggering in its implications. We're going to look at this stuff in the series to come. We need to. We're running out of time, as a pun. Anyway, well, I'll shut up there.
I saw a comment in the chat by Gabriella. Gabriella, just type in the chat, but can I ask a question? How old is your son? I'm just curious. 6. Wow.
6?
16.
16.
I want to encourage, because the question he asked is, my goodness, out of the mouth of babes. Wow.
Well, there certainly is a quickening going on. I wish I had understood to even ask that question at 16.
Yeah.
I was more interested in getting my driver's license and chasing girls.
I'm not going to answer the question today because it's such a big question. It is a huge question, and I did allude to it. But again, we're going to cover some things at Sukkot, and maybe this is just a hint to maybe dig deeper on the depths of the earth. Okay. What I will say is that I believe your son has correctly understood what the depths of the earth are, which then beckons a whole load of other questions. But I'm amazed, a 16-year-old to be asking that. At 16, I was trying to get high. That's what I was doing at 16, Curtis.
I wasn't. I was more righteous than Michael.
Well, I'm glad we got that established. What I will say, his conclusion of the depths of the earth, what it is, I believe, but the rest of it, it's too big a question to ask. It's way too big a question to ask because it brings up so many things, but I'm amazed.
Well, the reality of that is we're going to be looking at some things at Sukkot this year. I just, It's kind of sobering when you see a 16-year-old asking that kind of question. You think, how close are we?
Yeah.
It's kind of sobering reading that, actually.
To the 16-year-old, Mr. Volinska, keep hungering and thirsting. Yeah. Well, everybody, with that being said, Curtis, do you have any final words before I do the Hebrew blessing?
No, not really. Not after that question. Yeah, it's sobering. We may be all experiencing this and even having these discussions because it is, we're getting closer to our redemption draweth near. So, yeah, maybe that's just a sobering thought to ponder on right now for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everyone, Yah will bless you and he will guard you. Yah will shine his countenance upon you and he will be gracious to you. Yah will turn his countenance towards you and he will grant you shalom. Everyone, may the rest of your Shabbat be blessed. And let's praise our King for what he's doing in our individual lives, but also in us as a corporate body. It really is an honor to walk with all of you. Shabbat shalom, everyone.